Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Phasic Tipped in Focus. We are pleased to be joined this morning by Hanzly Albina of Blake-Albina Thoroughbred Services, of Newtown and her stud farm, a number of hats that Hanzly wears. He likes to wear hats, needs to wear hats as well. Hanzly, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for having me. Before we get started, I'd just like to say I'd like to apologize to your dozens of listeners because I did a little research before we started this, and the TDN writers room, this week's guest is Pat Day.
Yes. Yeah.
Legendary.
The legend.
Yeah, he's Hall of Famer, overcame great adversity.
Yes.
Is leading a wonderful after jockey life, and your guest is me.
Yeah.
So,
well, we had to get somebody this week,
yeah.
So thank you for being available
Hey.
and basically inviting yourself onto the podcast
Yeah.
because you've had some success recently with some of the Newtown Thoroughbreds, which we'll talk about here in a few moments. But I first want to touch on you growing up in the industry and being around Buckram Oak in your youth with your father, who was very influential with them. What was that experience like growing up at Buckram Oak and your exposure to the industry as a child?
It was unbelievable. It was a dream. I didn't realize it at the time how unique the opportunity was. There was no flying start. There was no preparation for, I guess, what I've now become. But yeah, it was unreal. My parents discouraged the industry, horse racing, completely. My father was like, they're not going to do this. This is really tough, and but that didn't work, right? So I would go to the races with him. My first memories are, so when my father trained he was an amateur jockey in the Middle East, and he retired very early, and he immediately became a trainer at 18. He was a trainer, and he was the trainer for King Hussein of Jordan's uncle, who had an immense stable.
Wow.
And he made him the private trainer. And he literally, he would start out with 200 horses. He'd go yearlings, go through, 2-year-olds yearlings.
Sure.
And go through them and refine them down like 60 horses. And that was the stable he would
And this would
run.
have been in the...
This is 70s,
Okay.
early 70s, all the way through. He would have been, before, he was riding earlier than that, but training 60s and 70s. And he said it was like a dream because you got to train all the best horses, and he's in the Middle East. He's doing very well as a trainer. And around 1979, 1980, the king's uncle died, and that's when, he'd always had an American dream. John Wayne, and he liked England. He loved England too. So he for some reason he always thought, I'm going to live in England and I'm going to live in the United States. He's like, that's what is going to happen. I don't know if he knew how it was going to happen. And so he was a top level trainer in the Middle East, and he my grandfather had been very instrumental in construction of racetracks. He was an owner in the Middle East, and that had put him next to Mr. Fusstock's father. And so my father hadn't actually known Mr. Fusstock himself, Mahmoud Fusstock. He'd known his father, and he got along with him very well, and my grandfather knew him, and so on and so forth. And so when it came time, Mr. Fusstock was doing very well in France. He had an unbelievable stable, or winning a lot of races. He was coming to the United States, buying horses. He was top buyer at July and other sales many times in the early days. He had started construction on what is now Stone Street, then was Buckram Oak Farm. 1977 was the first Arab-owned farm. And interestingly enough, to put it in perspective, when they were building that farm, there was only a few banks in town. And at the bank they were at, Buckram Oak Farm was the second biggest depositor behind PepsiCo.
Wow.
So it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And so they're building that farm. And anyway, so he has this division in France, and he wants a division in England. So they call him up and they say, hey, we know Sharif Nasser, the Uncle of the King, has died. You want to come over here and train? He said, yeah, let's go. So at 2 years old, I went to England. So when we got to England, in true Mr. Fusstock fashion, he had to do everything first class. So he's going to build a stable. So on the Hamilton Road in Newmarket, which is like, I don't know, the rodeo drive of horse racing in Newmarket. He's building a state-of-the-art stable, never been seen before. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for the stable, we rent Lester Piggott's stable on Hamilton Road. So literally, I would walk out of my house and there's Lester Piggott, and that was my earliest memories. I knew him to see him all the time, and his house was down the road, and he'd come over to eat with my dad.
The best kind of exposure as a kid, you're around
he'd
legends.
Watch my dad eat. He wouldn't actually eat. He'd watch my dad eat. But still, ice cream and champagne, that's all he would eat.
Really?
Yeah. When my dad used to say when he used to go to the races with Lester, he'd make him stop 3 times for ice cream on the way home. And he would only drink champagne because people would
What kind of ice cream? Anything in particular?
I mean, the first one you come, soft serve. I mean, in England,
but what flavor? Any particular?
Vanilla.
Just straight vanilla.
In England, they have this thing called a Flake 99. Are you familiar?
No.
It's soft serve ice cream in a cake cone with a flake chocolate stick stuck into it.
Interesting.
And it is widespread. It's what.
And that was his go-to.
His go-to.
So then you're there in your youth.
I'm there in my youth,
and you transition to the United States.
Yeah. So he leaves. We're in Newmarket. He has the stable move on to Oak Stable, and he leaves Mr. Fusstock mid-'80s. Goes public in England. Is public in England for a number of years. Clients include Maktoum Al Maktoum, and he does quite well. And then he gets a call. At that point, he'd been training for 40 years, and he's got kids, and he's like, Mr. Fusstock says, "Hey, would you like to run the farm in Kentucky?" And he thought, well, I'll go to Kentucky. I always want to go to America. We'll be at the farm for 10 years, and I'll probably start training again. Well, 10 turned into 20, it never happened again. But I was always discouraged, and when I got to the farm, I got to work at the farm, night watch, and work in the barns, and then work up to assistant manager and get everything, get a lot of experience that way. But more importantly than that, I got to do a lot of sales stuff. So, I get to follow. I don't know if you remember, but when he used to buy horses, it was an entourage. It was a whole big thing, and I got to walk around with him and see what was happening. Mr. Fusstock had an unbelievable eye. My dad also. And we would go around, and I would be privy to all the conversations and understand everything and be shown. I mean, it was just everything. And it got to the point where I'm 18 years old, and he would let me do deals on horses. And he didn't care. It was like, yeah, Hanzly, go ahead and do this.
Wow.
And so I'd go up to people, they were grown men, and I'd be like, I'd like to offer you $500,000 on that horse. And they'd be like, who are you? And should I believe you? And they would ask around. They were like, you should probably believe him. Yeah.
So what did that mean to you as a child, seeing your father say, I am going to make it in England, I'm going to be in America, and then do that, successfully do that? Does that help set you on the path that you're on today, to see him execute the plan that he laid out?
Yeah. I think that everyone in our business, if they're honest with them, wants to be a trainer. I don't care who you are. I mean, come on, let's be honest, right? Everyone wants to be a trainer. It's super sexy, But the reality is when I went to be a trainer, I was an intern here at Fasig-Tipton. In the summertime, I would go to work at Calder for the Buck-Remote trainer at the time, was Mohammed Mubarak. And it didn't take long to figure out that it was not a sustainable thing for me.
For you, yeah.
Right. So, I kind of wanted a family, maybe. I mean, I don't even know that I was thinking that so much, but I probably didn't want to work that hard, to be honest. If you want to be honest, I mean, it's like, 4:30 wake-up calls, that's early, So, I just, I think that's what gets you. I mean, you look around, you see, no vacation time, and it wasn't for me. It weeded me out right away, which was great. But
even being on a farm, though, to be fair, there's not a ton of vacation time.
There's
either.
not, but it's different.
It's different.
It is different. You do have more of a life. You exist during normal hours more. 4:30 wake up calls. You don't really exist. But whatever. It is different. But I do.
But you got all these experience at a young age. You got to experience the farm, the purchasing side of things.
It was unreal.
On 2 different continents.
Yeah, it was.
And have that exposure to know.
This
is what you want to do.
It was very interesting. It could not be replaced. I really think I was fortunate. It was amazing how it worked out. But it allowed, being exposed to the sales, it made me see how much I love the sales. I love the action of it. I love the pure commerce of it. I love the fact that you have to take a stand, whether in on the buy side. It's not about the horses you don't buy. It doesn't matter. When people tell me stories about the horses they don't buy, I could care less. It's only about the horses you buy.
You do buy, yeah.
That's it. And when you get to be a certain agent of a certain caliber, you get to be able to buy just about any horse. And then the pressure's really on. Like when you're young and you piece together thousands of dollars from your friends and your grandma and whatever, and you go buy a horse, if you're successful, that's great, because it was really hard to do that. But when you have all the money to spend and you go to a sale and the world is your oyster, well, the pressure's really on then.
Right.
Because you can't make excuses.
We'll get to that buying aspect in just a moment, but by the time that Buck Remoke is starting to wind down a little bit, toward the end of Buck Remoke, you're the assistant broodmare manager, assistant farm manager at that time?
Assistant farm manager at the time, of Buck Remoke. And Mr. Fustok got killed. He was hit by a car, and it just so happened that a few years before, I had been with one of his associates. I'd been forming a company named Three Roses, and it was more because he wanted to sell. Mr. Fustok wasn't a seller. He was not a seller. Occasionally, but very rarely would he sell a horse, and it damaged us because if we ever did want to sell a horse, people were like, "Why is he selling this horse?" And so this division is Three Roses division, which actually became Four Roses. Was the selling end of it, right? So horses in that part could be either purchased pinhooked or raced, and people would know, hey, they're going to sell these horses. That was anyway. So that had happened. He passed away, and the heirs kept me on to kind of run what became Four Roses, which is everything. We cleared out a lot of the mares and horses that he had, and we kind of refined it down and had a lot of success racing what was left and buying more horses and racing some of those for a few more years.
And this is 2007, 8?
It would have been
somewhere in there.
Yeah, around the Big Brown Derby. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so we had Anik Nakal. We finished out racing Silver Wagon. We finished out racing Silver Train. I did the deal on Silver Train. That's another thing. I mean, I was young doing stallion deals, and I had no business doing those deals. But I learned a lot. I learned to read a contract, and I learned that, these stallion deals where everyone's like, oh, it's a given. None of it's a given.
Yeah.
And if I could give advice to anyone who has a nice horse and is getting ready to do a stallion deal, is do not sign any deals without seeing the syndicate agreement. There's no such thing as a standard syndicate agreement. That is a fallacy. And, farms would be really angry I tell you that. But yeah, I mean, you need to see everything. The syndicate manager controls your horse. Doesn't matter how much they own. So you need to make sure those guys have rules to play by, and everyone should be playing by the same rules.
So this is in 2000. So then you have the Three Roses.
Yeah, 3 Four Roses, yeah.
Which becomes Four Roses.
Becomes Four Roses. We had horses like Last
Were you
Song.
the fourth rose? Is that
I don't know what the rose thing was about. I just don't ask. I don't ask the owners about names.
Yeah.
Because it's very, sometimes it's personal.
It's personal, sure.
Yeah. But So we did that, and I that's where I really got to. It was on me. There was no one else. My dad had retired, and I learned a ton. We did. We had a horse named Fierce Wind. He won the Sam Davis. It was a Dixie Union, Nick Zito, and we did the deal on that horse, and we started getting offers, and they were ridiculous offers. You put in the Sam Davis, millions. No, I was like, oh God, we won't sell this horse. And then you'd be like, okay, well that's over. You move on, and then a week later they call you back like, more millions. And I was like, this guy's got to sell. He said, well, he'd be like, what do you think? I'm like, I would have sold two million ago.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And yeah, and at the end of it, I don't want to name any names because they probably don't want to be named, but the agent on the other side of the purchaser said to me, let's speak frankly. Do you think this horse is worth this money? We want to pay you. And I said, no, not a chance. And she said, that's what I said. And she said, but here's the thing. I told my owner that so many times now. We went through so many rounds of bidding that it's rude. I'm getting rude, and I don't want to be rude to this guy. And he wants this horse, and he thinks because you say no, that you think this horse is really good.
Interesting.
And I was like, I wish we were that smart. But, and that's what happened. Horse never won another race.
Interesting.
Never won another race.
I love these stories, and you are very open about this, and I appreciate that because this is great content. This is what people, they want to hear the stories behind the horses, and so I appreciate that insight. And it was about this time, so we're 2008, 2009. It was about this time you are starting your association with Ron Blake, which is about 2010, and you form Blake-Albina Thoroughbred Services.
Yeah, so if we back up a little bit, so when Buckram Oak Lexington sold, Furstock went to Ocala and bought a training center, and that was what he did. But that left with a lot of mares here in Lexington, and so I stayed back in Lexington. I managed the mares in the breeding operation, which was, I don't know, probably 40 to 60 mares at the time. And I split them up between Stuart Morris, or Jeff Morris at the time, Highclere, Jimmy Herbner, and Ron Blake. And the reason I did that is because we were a private farm, we're kind of isolated, but in the sales ring, we would because we bought so much, we would deal with these people a lot, and these people to me were exemplary. They always had really nice horses. They were always fitted just right. They were, they were the people that I thought their horses consistently looked great, and so we split them up amongst those people, and of course, I'll go through all of them. I mean, Stuart and Jeff were great, and the bulk of the mares were there because they kind of had the operation that could take the most. But working with Jimmy Herbner was unreal. I didn't realize at the time, but and for those who probably just ran into Jimmy at the sale, he's very quiet, so you won't really know. But like once you get to know him, he was a great guy.
Yeah,
very, very sharp. Kathy and Jimmy Herbner are Jimmy were, but Kathy and Jimmy are some of the sharpest people that have ever played this game.
It's interesting you say that because I read a quote that you had one time. Growing up young in the industry, you don't get to do a lot, but you get to study a lot.
Yeah.
And it seems like that served you very well. You just mentioned three people that you had kind of watched and studied a little bit, and then when it came time for you to make that transition, that's who you went to.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're an observer. I mean, that's one. You're an observer. I mean, you're very opinionated. You stand on your opinions. You just talked about that with the purchasing of horses. You have to stand on your opinions, but you're a very observant person.
I learn from the people around me every day. I don't ever want to stop learning. I mean, I always have to, as an opinionated person, to say the least. Yeah, my wife will attest to that. I think you have to stop and say, I could be wrong, and let me find out why I could be wrong. And I try to do that. And Jimmy once we're standing in the back ring looking at mares, and Kathy used to do it. She used to stand in the back of that pavilion and just poach these unbelievable, like, what in the world? And he said something to me that is obvious. Like when I say it, people are like, well, that's a stupid thing to say. But it's not obvious. And he said, I'll only pay a lot of money for production. And he didn't mean like I'll pay a lot of money for mares that have had grade 1 winning foals.
Right.
He meant, he's saying in a way, like you really have to focus when you're breeding mares, when you're buying mares. Racing is over. Racing is the currency of breeding. But that career is over. So when you look at a mare, you have to look at a mare for what her foals look like, produce, and can produce for you. I mean, and I'm not saying that in a commercial manner. I'm saying in a racing and commercial manner. So, and that really rang home for me. It's like, it doesn't matter that a mare looks like a train wreck if her foal looks fantastic, because I'm buying the mare for the foal.
Right.
People say, well, you eliminate the ability to sell the mare. Well, I agree, but I that's true. But for me and my strategies, I don't worry about reselling mares. My mares are going to be with me, and I'm going to breed them and get the foals until they retire and they're happy and be turned out.
Yeah.
I just find that to be, it's more efficient in the sense that if you are a new buyer, you new person entering the breeding game, and you want to buy a filly off the track, you want her first foal to be a Grade 1 winner, and then you want to sell that for $1 million and then sell her for $3 million, you are talking about winning the lottery.
Yeah.
And so when people
a lot has to go right for that.
has to go right. So, it's a different strategy than most people take. They want to hit that. And I love that people want to do that. I love people, that they want to go out and do that.
They want that action.
They want the action. They want to try it, and it's more satisfying. But for me, I take another route. But it always, every time I'm buying a mare, I think of Jimmy's words to me that, you're buying, I'm only going to pay for production. Everything else is.
You've had success with the mares, but you also had success when you and Ron kind of first formed the partnership, but then you go out and do some work on the buying end of things before. Now I would say you've transitioned a little bit more to the selling. Not that you're not an agent for the racehorse side of things as well, but you've probably more known a little bit now for the sales consignment with Blake-Albina. But you purchased Violence.
Yeah.
Talk about that process.
Yeah, actually, Nick Saluso and I purchased Violence, but we first started our partnership. We met in Dubai when I had Diamond Stripes won a race over there, and he had Benny the Bull, and we met there. We went out to dinner at an all-night Lebanese place, and then flew home the next day. And we stayed in contact. We found ourselves having a lot in common. We did a lot of business, and IAH was kind of dissolving, and Four Roses was kind of dissolving. It was just a times thing. So he had a large order to buy yearlings, and he really hadn't bought yearlings. He bought 2-year-olds and racing horses, but he was a little bit intimidated by Keeneland, and so he brought me on to kind of help. And we bought a bunch of horses. They did very well, but one of the horses was Kentharos. So I bought. He had to get on a plane, and we'd had the horse on a short list, and I had loved the horse, and I kept on harping on him, and he was, he didn't get for whatever reason he wasn't able to see the horse, and we'd bought all these horses, but a couple $1 million, and he's like, well, how much do you love this horse? I'm like, I love this horse. He's like, well, they paid $80. What do you want for it? And I'm like, I'll pay any amount. Just he's the best horse. I'm have
and
to
this
buy
is going
this
back
horse.
to standing. This is taking a stand, right? This is your.
I said it was just a feeling I got when I looked at that horse. It was in the Indian Creek consignment, and I just got a feeling. And he said, all right, I'm going to get on this plane, but you can have 160. I was like, okay, perfect. Went in there, bought it for $80,000. I thought someone was playing a joke. Like, you're looking around like. Has I been on the right horse? Is this the right horse? You check the number.
Yeah.
You try to do it subtly.
There's that momentary flash of panic.
There's a momentary panic, and so got this horse, and the funny thing is the plans changed on all those horses, and they all turned out to be sold as 2-year-olds, which was not what we were told. Right, the plan changed, and so John Moynihan then bought the horse, and rest is history. So then, they kind of maybe, rightfully or not, Nick kind of was like, well. That was good. So he said, you want to work on this Steve Marshall deal, this BlackRock deal with me? And I said, yeah, let's do it. So, yeah, we went there, and Steve is a character, a noted character of the turf. And he wasn't at the time, and we went in and we bought Violence. And the same thing, I had a really, really good feeling about the horse. And, it was, I don't know, it's weird. And I just knew he was going to be okay. He was going to be a good horse. And we had a lot of other nice horses in that crop too, but I knew he was going to be okay. And it was great.
And he comes out of the box as a brilliant juvenile. I'm sure you start getting offers when he's a 2-year-old. You're able to draw on your experiences from your past stallion deals, are you not? With a horse like this? Oh yeah. And kind of know where you're at. And
yeah, we had a lot of money, and a good owner. That Steve Marshall is a rare owner in the sense that he understood the business very quickly. His learning curve was great. I mean, we would say things and you would look like you wouldn't pay attention, and then later in conversations you would understand that he understood.
Yeah.
And to this day he is that way. It only takes one explanation for that guy. And So he understood going into that deal. He was a great negotiator. He helped us. We learned from him. We made sure we saw the syndicate agreement. And yeah, it was good for everyone. We went down.
Was this your first horse that you had purchased as a yearling that you did a stallion deal on, or were there earlier horses
Yeah,
that
there
you
were
would?
earlier horses I did, but in the group, it would be unfair to say I purchased the earlier horses.
Yeah.
But I was with Buck Remote at the time, and I certainly was not a senior member.
Fair.
But yeah, I was definitely part of it. That we did. I did stunt. I mean, we did. I did the Silver Train deal. So we did that deal, and I didn't purchase that horse, but I was a part of that team. Silver Wagon deal, we did that deal. I did a bunch of stallion deals. I did some even in New Mexico. Silver Season was a horse that we did in New Mexico, and
Did it feel any different that you had helped select this horse when you're doing the stallion deal? Does it change your aspect on things at all?
No, I mean, I think Silver Train, I felt like was my horse too.
Yeah.
I was there when we bought him. I remember distinctly. Here's a great story about that horse. So we went to the farms the year before Silver Train was a yearling. We went to the Mulholland, Joe Mulholland. We went to the farm, and Mr. Mulholland, Joe's father, was alive, and we had bought a horse named Mint, who had won, I want to say, the Carry Back. A Calder Sprint, a grade 3 winner, very nice horse. We bought a number of good horses from the Mulhollands. So we made sure the whole entourage, and we're talking about, silk trousers and the whole thing in Cadillac. We go out to the Mulhollands farm, and there's, hard boot Mulhollands out there. And we look at some yearlings, and in this particular, none of the yearlings really struck Mr. Foostock's fancy, and everyone's like, kind of okay. And they talked about how they had a lot of success together. And then Mr. Mulholland's like, I've got 2 babies. And I'll show them to you, but I'm not going to sell them to you. And Mr. Foostock goes, okay. So they bring out these babies. 2 old Trieste. Stunners. And he said, but why won't you sell them to me? He goes, because I'm going to sell them to you next year. And this is unreal. The next year, we forgot all about it. We go to Fasig-Tipton, July. There it is. Silver Train. Buy that old Trieste.
Wow.
Keeneland, September. We get the short list out. There it is. The other old Trieste was just a brick shit house. And so we're like, we've got to have this horse too. And his name was like Blades of Steel or something like, I don't know, something like that. I named it after a video game. But it was
a great hockey game.
It was a great hockey game. You could find
Did you ever play Blades of Steel?
That's why I named it. Yeah.
Oh, you named it.
Yeah.
Great game.
But the horse didn't live up to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we bought both. We ended up buying both of them as yearlings, and one of them was Silver Train.
That's amazing.
It is that we went and saw those babies. It was amazing. But yeah, that's another great guy of this business. One of the characters of this business is Mulhollands.
You've got all these successes now, and then what was the impetus, or what was the introduction to where you're currently at with Newtown Anner Stud and helping with that farm?
Well, we did some work for Mr. Regan early on. He bought Anstu Farm in New York, and I think things weren't quite going the way he wanted them to do, and he didn't understand. I don't think he had a farm in Ireland, a big farm in Ireland that we'd heard about, and Anstu was a place in Millbrook where he was going to go on the weekends, and he loved it. He considered himself a farmer overall, but he didn't understand the whole scope of the industry. So he just came in, brought us in. We bought some horses for him, and done quite well. And so we went up to the farm in Millbrook, and he's an interesting guy. So we said, well, let's go bring in some mares. It's like 40 degrees outside. I'm wearing tennis shoes and the lightest pair of pants apparently I've ever worn in my life. I'm like, okay, sure. So we go out in these fields, walking up these hills. We're slipping around. It's messy. It's cold. I think I had like the lightest Patagonia on. And I'm like, this better be worth it. This is ridiculous. What are we doing out here? And I knew it was a test. He's testing us. Right? So literally Nick and I and the manager at the time are bringing these whole mares in, and we're talking. And so finally we get to business, and it sits down. And he's like, well, what do you think? And I said, you got a really nice pile of rocks here. And he's like, what do you mean? I paid like a lot of money. And I said, yeah, I know. It's a beautiful place. I'm sure it's going to be nice having your family and friends run around here and have a good time. I said, but it's not a place to raise horses. You need to, we can use the New York-bred program, but we need to use it in a tactical way. We need to move our yearlings as soon as we can. We need to, we have to use it for what it's good for, which is starting mares, for giving mares opportunities early, for their foals to run a restricted company, opportunity to get black type. That's what we should use it for. And so we made it more tactical. We boarded our horses at a couple farms here, and then the broodmare band got large enough to where I was like, I think I'm just going to buy a farm. I was like, okay, so well, how big a farm? And we went and looked at farms, and we were looking for something that was 250. And when we got out there, he realized very quickly, as a businessman, as a brighter person than I, he's like, the efficiencies, the values in the bigger farms. I'm like, yeah, less people can afford bigger farms, but there's a higher carry cost. And he said, well, we're not going to pay this for that. We'll just buy this. And we ended up buying Brittany Farm, which is a standardbred farm. It was like 850 acres. And we've since made it bigger. But and that was the price point he was happy at. And the rest is history. We've spent a lot of time, effort, and money making that farm, bringing it back to life. And it's been generous to us, in the sales ring and racing-wise too. And, yeah.
And you and Ron have been an integral part in that. You and Ron Blake, the Blake and Blake-Albina.
Yeah, Ron Blake is the Blake and Blake-Albina, and he has been my partner since I had horses with him when he was Blake Agency. Right around the recession time is when we started our business together, and it's the best partner. It's the best partner, and I hope he would say the same thing. But he has been great, and it was hard because when we started for Newtown, it was full time. A lot of our other clients, we were able to run our farm. And then we were able to also operate their businesses. In fact, at one time we had Blake-Albina Farm, and then we had Black Rock Farm, and then we had another farm. So he was running all three because he was day to day, and I'm more like big picture stuff, So, but in the Newtown job, I said, look, this has to be done right, and we have to relinquish your farm. And he said, this is what we have to do, and I told Mr. Regan, and rightfully said, this is the guy, and you need to pay him and move over.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And it's been great ever since.
There's been a number of successes. Yeah,
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I sleep very soundly knowing that Ron is there watching over everything.
Yeah. And you didn't completely abandon the New York program. I mean, you had talked about visiting the farm the first time, but you guys have really used that very well. It sounds like that was the plan you set out for. You've bred a number of very nice New York breds up there. We'll talk about one of those in just a few moments, but you've been a big supporter of that program, and you've been quoted a number of times saying you believe it's the best state bred program, and you guys really do support that as a regional market, whether it's through sales and then also through the breeding aspect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every major owner I can eliminate the West Coast, but every major owner on the East Coast, if you race on the East Coast, you should have some New York breds. Because if you want to race at Saratoga, there's more races for restricted state breds than any other races.
Yeah.
Why would you not? You get to go to the winter circle and celebrate the same way.
Right.
What's the difference? And guess what? Your maiden pays $120. It's not terrible.
Yeah.
When I speak about the restricted New York bred, I don't mean to minimize it. They're better than they used to be by a long shot. It's not a cakewalk. It's not a 30 claimer going over there winning.
Right.
That's not what it is anymore. So
they're legitimate horses winning those maiden special weights.
But you have opportunities to run more. You have a chance to use your conditions twice if it's an open horse, right? You get to run both. So it's a lot more money. So it makes racing more palatable. And people forget, like, you go to the New York bred sale and you should just buy an open horse. And then the bonus is you also have this New York bred.
It's the incentive on the back end.
Incentive on the back end. I don't understand if there's a stigma. Maybe there isn't. Maybe I just read it wrong. But why would you put up it's not a lesser breed of horse anymore. They've won derbies. I mean, what is the
right?
What are we talking about here? Like it's fiction. So yeah, I think every big owner should have some York-breds.
What makes you place a mare in New York versus Kentucky? You guys have built up a great operation here. You had $1 million yearling that you sold at Saratoga. That was your first $1 million yearling that you sold as a sales agency. It was an end of mischief. What differentiates the programs for you? What do you like to take advantage of? What do you see has worked for you guys?
Young mares. I like to send young mares up there, get their start. First 3 foals. I get to qualify the mare, and then those 3 foals get to run restricted. And so that means that I get, if the first hurdle is the sale. So we offer all of our yearlings. Every single one of our yearlings are offered. And I think Ned in your previous podcast spoke to it. Like, we do that because we don't want people to think that we're cherry picking.
Yeah.
We have to be fair to the consumer. And so we put them all up, and it forces me to be very precise about my appraisals. So I appraise them all. The ones that I don't think are worthy of putting $50,000, $60,000 a year into training for us, and that's a finite number, right? It's not unlimited. Those horses will go, and they will go at below what I think technically their value is. And the other ones will have reserves that I think are fair. And on the above, you'll race, and on the below, I'll race.
It served you well because you just last week, at the time that we are recording this, you had the New York Breeders' Futurity winner with What You Talking About. So you're rewarded with that stakes program, and then you're also selling a half sibling to it during the Kentucky October sale.
Yeah, absolutely. What You're Talking About, we sold last October to Wesley Ward and Ben McElroy, 2 very sharp guys, and it was very fast horse looking, and I think they made a tremendous buy. And yeah, we have the full here by McKenzie. Very nice horse. Displays a lot of the same attributes that horse had, the fast look. Yeah, we're very, very, very excited to have that, and that was a very timely update. So we're happy.
You always seem to have a very good mix of freshman sires that you guys breed to and proven sires. What do you feel? What is the mix when you're planning these matings? It's a moving target, clearly. It's a long process to get to the sales, but what do you look for with those younger mares? And you always have that good mix of freshman sires with proven sires. What goes into that?
I like to breed. I breed to both, obviously, but I like to breed to Dialed In. It's a great example. Dialed In, Blame, those 2 stallions are key for me because I know what they produce. And if a young mare produces for me what I think a good one of those, then I'm in long haul. Then I spend money. But I like to see what she can do with one of those. And so, like, I'll have those key sires to do that with. And I think that's key. I mean, as far as proven sires are concerned, you're talking to a guy who bred Cosmo's buddy to Painter this year. So
but there's a reason for that. I mean,
but it's not the commercial decision, I guess, but it should be the commercial decision, right? And so, maybe I'm bucking the trend. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. I don't know, but I want to see what happens. I would regret at the end of her career not breeding her back to Painter, and seeing if I could get a Nixco. And so, talk to Mr. Regan.
Which, yes, that would make a full sibling to Nixco.
Right. So we will see. We will see.
You had also mentioned one time, I think you were talking about Kateri, that you had done a lot of research on that mare, and I believe that she came from what was the family from Cozine's family? And that's where you had talked about doing a lot of observing and stuff like that.
That's right. She was a February purchase, I believe.
And that's also, you have some horses in the consignment in October that are mares that you have purchased either from February or other sales at Fasig-Tipton that you then bring them back and kind of bring it full circle with their foals. Yeah. But that family aspect that you talked about and all the research, and again, that goes back to your comment about being observant and getting into those families that you observed and that you watched. What are the traits that you looked for in those families? Is it just because they came from a certain operation, or is it how they ran on the racetrack? What do you use in those observations?
My observations are looks, right? So for me, it's the physical, and what I'm looking for is I can't predict who's going to race and who's not, right? So what I want to do is, from a broodmare perspective, I want to have the best looking horse I can have. That is my goal. If I do that, then I feel like I'm successful. Whatever the stallion is, wherever I am on the level of purchase, I want to be producing the best looking foal I can, most correct, biggest hip, balance. I want all of that. If I do that, then I feel successful. What happens after that, I don't know. And then decisions change, right? So you'll have a mare, and people are like, "You've sold 1.5 million horses out of this mare. Why are you selling it? Or why you reduce the?" And it's like, well, because we didn't get to where we wanted to be. I know she had opportunities, and it didn't work out. So yeah, for me, it's all about that. I cannot control. Like people say, well, some of these horses are offset. Some of these horses are not great looking. Look at them; they're running. I'm like, yeah, but that's not a strategy, right? Like if your strategy is any horse can win a grade 1, then you will be broke very soon. That's not a strategy, right? You have to have discipline.
It's a goal.
It's a goal,
yeah,
but it's not a strategy.
Yeah.
And the reality is if looks don't matter, when you get to be a stallion, when you do hit the home run, right, then you're discounted. You're not an expensive horse. When you're a stunner, then you're worth many multiples more. So that should be the part of the goal, But
it'll be fun to watch the draft during the Kentucky October yearling sale. And this has been a great episode, but we're going to debut a new segment here to kind of close things out. And not that we haven't had laughs along the way, but hopefully we'll get a few more. We're going to debut the final 8th segment here. This is the final 8th. 8 questions, random, some about horses, some not. And just your initial reaction to this. What's your favorite horse of all time? Could be for any race. Citation. Did you get to see him run?
Yes.
Why Citation?
First millionaire, Triple Crown winner. I think that threshold is huge.
Yeah. Be the first to do something.
First to do $1 million, and that $1 million like that is like you could buy Kentucky for $1 million.
Yeah.
It was like it's a lot
of money.
Real money. It's not like now.
Yeah.
But it was that to me. It just struck me as that horse. I love the way he looked. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you want to ask me more recent, I mean, Dr. Fager, love Dr. Fager. The home team won at Silverhawk, obviously the horse I grew up with. Right?
Yeah.
But, so there's 3 answers.
There's 3 answers. Okay. And we're used to that. Multiple answers to one question.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
If it weren't for this, what would you be doing? If it weren't for horse racing, what would you be doing?
I think I'd be selling ice cream. When I was in high school, I heard about the creamery at Penn State University, where you can go get a degree in like ice cream making, and they have the creamery is the ice cream place. They sell that product, and one of them at the time it was the flavor is called Peachy Paterno. I'm guessing it's not called that anymore, but it was a peach.
What was it?
Peachy Paterno.
Peach.
Yeah, and it was delicious. I had someone bring me a gallon. And it was delicious. Lived up to, but it was my dream to wear the white coat and the hairnet. At the time, needed the hairnet, and I would, could see myself in the vats, be like, no, too much sugar. I mean, that's what I thought.
And nor do you have the need for the hairnet anymore.
Not anymore.
No,
not anymore.
Besides the Triple Crown races and the Breeders' Cup races, what is a race that you would like to win? That you haven't already.
I mean,
could be an international race. Could be domestic.
I want to say Epsom Derby, but I probably would equal it with the Arc.
Yeah.
Those are the ones.
Favorite hobby outside of horse racing?
Not really. I guess smoking cigars. Is that a hobby?
Well, I mean, it can be.
Yeah, I feel like it is.
Yeah. You guys are known for having quality cigars at your consignment.
We are.
Other than the Fasig-Tipton Focus, what are you listening to right now?
I listen to F1 podcast.
Big F1 guy.
Huge.
Yeah.
Love it.
Because of the Netflix show, or were you before?
I was when I was a very young boy, I was a Nigel Mansell fan because England and the whole thing, and then I lost interest, and then the F1 show certainly brought me back.
Most thrilling moment you've had in the sport?
Oh gosh, probably Violence winning cash call for charity. But I will say, aside from putting aside personal horses I had anything to do with, I would say that the Zenyatta Blame Breeders' Cup was the most exciting. I mean, the stands were rattling.
Yeah.
I was on a chair. I don't know how I got on the chair. Screaming for like just pure brilliance. And everyone was on the same page. No one was, it's not like, oh, I hate Jordan. No, it's not any of that. Everyone was rooting for Michael Jordan that day.
Right.
And he was going to do something that was going to shock the world. And it didn't happen, whatever. But in defeat, it was almost like a greater accomplishment. It was an amazing feeling. I think if you were there that day and you were not a lifelong horse racing fan, then I don't know what
if you can't get excited over that. Yeah.
Yeah, you should go.
Even not being there, I remember watching the race at home and just in complete awe and probably yelling as much as everybody was at Churchill Downs.
It was. I don't know how the horses didn't freak out. I don't know how these horses don't freak out. It was so loud. It was terrifying. I mean, if you weren't so excited, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Just the noise,
and under the lights and just the whole whole setting. Yeah,
it's crazy.
You're flipping through the channels on a weeknight. What's the one show you're always going to stop and watch? Could be an old show, could be a movie. Yeah, just one show you're always going to watch.
I don't know.
Your ringtone is the Office ringtone.
Office, Seinfeld. Those ones. Those are my. I love Cheers. Cheers is a big one. When I go to sleep, I'll play Cheers episodes because there's so many of them. It's like 10 seasons.
Yeah.
And I'll just play them, and then I'll be able to fall asleep, and I won't feel bad because I don't miss anything. So I already memorized it. I memorized the episode, but it's like comforting to hear like Woody Harrelson and like Norm and everyone and Ernie Pantuso, coach. It's very comforting to hear those. I heard them when I was a kid, and I hear them now. And so I go to sleep listening to Cheers. It drives my wife crazy.
All right, and this is the last of the final eighth, and this is perhaps the most important for you because you're known for your quality orders when we go out to lunch or to dinner. I think your level of foodie is probably internationally renowned, and you're known for that. So you have a table for four for your favorite meal. What's the meal? Who's at the table?
Wow, that's very strong. It's probably it's hard to choose from your children. It really is, and I feel like my meals
are your kids.
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like every meal I take, I feel is one less meal I'm going to have. I don't know when it's going to come to an end, but that's the way I look at it. It may be wrong. I don't know. Like these people who say they live, when I say do you live to eat or eat to live, and they say I just eat to live. I don't know who you are.
Yeah,
I can't relate.
You're
to
a
you
live
in any
to
way.
eat kind of guy.
If I lost my sense of taste, I'd probably just go end it. I don't know. I don't know what to do. And I'm sorry to the people that don't have taste. Maybe it's really nice. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in I would say Craft Steak, Tom Colicchio's place.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
But if there are probably 20 restaurants I can name, but I just really have had this is a very great place for me, and I love it. And then the people I would have at the table, I don't know. I guess I got 5 kids. You kind of put me in a bad spot here. Only 4.
Well, that's the point. Yeah,
they're at the table next door, maybe.
Well, they could be.
So can we eliminate family that way? I can not have.
Yeah.
To
Okay. So the caveat is it's
no family.
Yeah.
So it's people of the world.
People of the world, with us or not with us. This is your dream setting. This is your dream meal, and the people that you want to tell stories with.
Yeah, I would want Vincent O'Brien.
Yeah. Good call.
That would be my first
Good call.
I would want Vincent O'Brien. I would want probably the Bald Eagle.
Okay.
Charlie Whittingham. So that's 2 trainers. That's a lot of trainer talk.
Is that so you don't feel out of place with the baldness at the table?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I don't know who else. Who else would be So you can't really say Gandhi at this point because that would be a weird group, wouldn't it?
Well, it's okay.
I mean,
It'd be an interesting group.
Yeah. Gandhi probably would be pretty quiet for that one, wouldn't he? Not a lot to say. I don't know. I don't know who the other one is. I don't know. I mean, it's me. I'm there. So me, I don't know.
Who's sitting to your right? You've got
Am I right?
You got Vincent to the left. Charlie's across from you. Who's sitting on your right?
It's a tough question.
You're never stumped like this. I'm
I know,
shocked.
but it's the
There's so much
the
pressure on you.
The parameters are just so tight.
Yeah.
4 people. You can't get a 6 top. What kind of restaurant is this?
No,
don't
no,
have
you
pull?
can't get it. No.
Oh,
This is last minute. Like you just won the Derby. You're going to go get a meal, and it's last minute.
I don't know. I guess Derby last minute. Gonna go get a meal. I don't know. Oh, I know who it'll be. John Nehru.
John Nehru, yeah. Going back to the
3 trainers,
cozy.
which is super weird. But he couldn't pick family. Let's just make sure everyone understands this.
Yeah.
You know, I love
You wouldn't
my
have an
children and
F1
mother.
driver in there. You
I
wouldn't
mean,
have.
maybe. I guess I could have.
Yeah.
I would have Sergio Perez in there, maybe. But you know,
Then you'd have to kick somebody out of there, and that'd be awkward.
yeah,
Yeah. That's a good group.
yeah.
That's a good group. Well, Hanzly, this has been a lot of fun. It's always great to catch up with you. And I think we're going to give some other podcasts a run for their money this week. I think you came in with some lofty expectations, but you delivered, as usual.
I don't know. I think more likely that people will just tune in to hear your olive oil voice ringing through their car stereos. Speaking of which, I called you and I want to compliment you on your answering machine message.
Oh,
It's great.
Thank you.
Great. People should call just to listen to it.
Just to listen
it's
to
that
it?
Good. I will tell you that I'm against the genre generally. I don't think that people should be leaving any messages. I think that technology has gotten to a point where you should just hang up and text. Unless you're on a landline or voice over IP, then you have the right to leave a message.
Yeah.
But everyone else does not need to leave the message. Hey, give me a call. Don't ever leave that message. Text it.
really?
Yes. Why would you? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Hey, we have computers, but send me something over on parchment. What are you talking about? We've moved forward. The text is there. It doesn't interrupt. I see what's going on. You don't need to leave a message. And leaving a number on voicemail, what are you doing? Text the number.
Yeah,
It's a press.
yeah,
If you leave a number on voicemail, I have to find pen and paper. I have to pull the car over.
yeah.
I don't have
It
the
leaves
ability,
too much. Yeah.
I don't have the ability to memorize numbers like that anymore.
Well, I think with the Siri aspect, though, when it records the number, like if you can see the display on the message too, that it also has the phone number in there.
That's true.
But you don't. Yeah, don't leave a name and number. That's I think we're a little past that, unless it is your office line or something like that.
Do you know I was at the O'Brien Inn in Saratoga a few years ago, and we're sitting there, and Durkin walks in with 2 bottles of wine in a bag, sits up at the counter, starts pouring himself some glass of wine. I'm like, look, that was with John Terranova, who is a great person to eat a meal with. He would be number.
He's
5.
on the AE list.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Great. And I said, hey, it's Tom Durkin. And he's like, oh yeah, he comes in here a lot. Yeah, that's John. And we finished our meal, so he got a bottle in. I mean, I'm not saying anything. I'm just,
Yeah,
I'm not judging. I'm
no,
not judging.
no.
Just say no. I don't say no. Send letters to Boyd Browning. So we went. So I went over, and they're like, "Hey guys, give me a minute." I'm like, "What are you gonna do? You gonna go like be a fanboy for Tom?" I was like, "Just give me a second." So I'm like, "Hey, Mr. Durkin, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your meal. Blah blah blah." I'm like, "I was just wondering if you could record my answering machine message," and he was like, "Well, sure." And I realized he's pretty hammered. I don't know how this is going to go.
Okay. All right.
And he's like, what's your name? And I realized at that moment, this is not going to work because my name is not John Smith. My name is Hanzly Albina. And Tom Durkin at that point was not getting Hanzly Albina.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay. So he's just like, I usually get 2,000 for this. I'm like, okay, sorry. So I hit the record button and he's like, hi, this is Tom Durkin, and blah, blah. And he's like, you have reached Hanzly Albina's phone. But he couldn't even, it was like, he verbally goobed it.
Yeah.
And so it was my message. I was so proud of it. And people would call me and be like, we hung up because we didn't know who that was and we didn't understand.
They thought they dialed the wrong number.
Thought they dialed the wrong number. Yeah.
You can't go for the celebrity greeting because people panic and they think that they called the wrong
but
number.
I wanted you to record my answering message, but I'm afraid that they're going to hang up on that too.
Well, I don't have to say, hi, this is Jesse. I could just say, you've reached Hanzly Albina's phone. Please leave your name and number.
Did you get that back there? All right. I will not be paying you, just so you know.
Please leave your name and number.
Yeah.
Please leave a message. Do not text him.
No, text me. Do not leave. Oh, yeah, I see what you're doing there. That's not good. All right, we ran over here.
No, Hanzly, thank you very much. It's a joy. Best of luck the rest of the year, and thanks for joining us today on the Phasing Tipped in Focus.
Thank you, Jesse.